This. You've got to take a look at this headline in the Wall Street Journal. The Impeachment Kangaroo, written by Dan Henninger, who frequently joins us on a Thursday morning. All right, Dan, welcome to the show.
Good to be here.
The president actually called the impeachment hearings a kangaroo court. Did you pick up on that?
Yes, it was the president in his cabinet meeting this week. I believe it was on Tuesday, where he suddenly looked up from his cabinet meeting papers and said, what's going on down there at the impeachment hearings is a kangaroo court.
As he does.
Yes, he does. And I said, this was another Trump half-truth, I'm afraid, because the entire city of Washington has turned into a kangaroo court.
Make your case.
Well, Exhibit A, for my money, was Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, who on Monday morning was appearing in the Washington media as having participated in the smear campaign against Trump witnesses up at the impeachment hearings. And this was because Ron Johnson had produced a document inside which he does indeed criticize Lieutenant Colonel Vindman for his role in all this. But the important thing was that all of this drew attention to Ron Johnson's letter. It was an 11-page letter to the House Intelligence Committee describing his experience with the Ukrainians, with President Trump, and trying to get the aid released for the Ukrainians. Ron Johnson is Ukraine's perhaps foremost advocate of Ukraine in the Congress. And if you read this thing, you get a sort of coherent overview of what has happened here. Yes, a lot of people in the administration were trying to get aid to Ukraine so they could fight off the Russians in eastern Ukraine. The president was saying that he didn't like the Ukrainians. He was holding back on it. Ron Johnson went in and tried to convince him several times that the Ukrainians were worth supporting. They had a new government. President Zelensky elected with 73% of the vote. But he makes two salient points. One, the whistleblower that set all this off. And people like Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, he said, look, if you have disagreements with the president's policy, and the president of the United States does set foreign policy, then you can either persuade him, and if you can't persuade him, then you should resign and go public and take your issues with the president public, which is not what has happened here.
No,
instead, we've had this internal insurrection. The second point he makes is that there were very important foreign policy issues at the center of the Ukrainian dispute. And everybody in the State Department, in the National Security Council, was trying to get that pressed forward. Ultimately, it was. The aid got released. To my mind, those issues transcend the idea that the president was seeking a quid pro quo to force President Zelensky into an investigation of the 2016 elections. There are much more important issues out there than that one.
And I simply cannot believe that we would remove this president from office on the basis of this, as you say, kangaroo court. Bearing him is just about a phone call. I can't believe we're prepared to do that.
Yeah, I mean, he makes the policy. It was a policy dispute. And we all know that in foreign policy, it gets very intense inside the State Department, the National Security Council. Those people fight all the time, trying to get the president's ear, trying to get the president on their side. That was what was going on here.
And what do we do in the future? You've had an impeachment effort. You've drawn him up in front of this court. And what do presidents do in the future when they're discussing foreign policy, when they're discussing with the State Department about what we should do? Do they still have freedom of authority in foreign policy? I don't think they do. I think it's downgraded. It's watered down.
Well, I think the damage is done at the lower levels, lower meaning, say, the National Security Advisor, the Secretary of State, ambassadors. Do they feel that their conversations with the president or each other are confidential and protected by executive privilege, or will they just routinely be dumped out in the middle of a congressional hearing? You cannot conduct foreign policy on that basis.
The damage done to just the foreign policy establishment and the presidency, I think, is really significant.
Yeah, and so the impeachment hearing is going to do that damage. The impeachment probably will go forward, though I'm beginning to wonder, Stuart, if there aren't going to be more Democrats who vote against impeachment.
They need, what, 217, 218 votes?
And they'll probably get
them.
But a lot of those Democrats who defeated Republicans in 2018, you know, few of them are talking about impeachment when they go home because they're afraid that their case has not been made to cast that vote to impeach an American president.
Fair enough. Dan Henninger. Wait, it's Thursday. It must be Thursday. Dan Henninger's here. All right. Dan, thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it.